I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who finds out his wife is cheating. But here I am writing this, feeling like the punchline of a bad joke. My name is Jake, and for the last 7 years I thought I had everything figured out. I married Sarah, a woman I adored, and we built a life together in a small, cozy house in Seattle. We were that couple who could finish each other's sentences, who shared everything from Netflix passwords to our dreams for the future. Or at least, that's what I thought. Things started to change about 6 months ago. It was subtle at first. Sarah, who used to be so open and transparent, began pulling away. She became secretive, often staying late at work, claiming she had to meet up with clients. I know the corporate world can be demanding, but this felt different. My gut instinct kicked in, but I pushed it aside. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, Sarah had always been the dependable one, the rock in our relationship. But then the little things began to add up. She started coming home later than usual, sometimes reeking of cheap cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Every time I asked her about it, she'd laugh it off or give me some excuse about coworkers being too touchy-feely. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her. So I did what any clueless husband would do. I ignored the signs and convinced myself that maybe it was just a phase. One night, I was cleaning up the house after a long day at work when I stumbled upon a receipt tucked away between the couch cushions. It was for a restaurant I had never heard of. The date was recent and there was a name scribbled on it, Tom. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I couldn't help but wonder who Tom was. Was he a colleague, a friend, or something worse? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a business dinner, but deep down I knew better. That night I confronted her. "What's going on, Sarah? Who's Tom?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. She looked at me wide-eyed, and for a moment I thought I saw something like guilt flash across her face. But then she quickly masked it with defiance. "What are you talking about, Jake? You're being ridiculous. Tom is just a coworker," she spat out, rolling her eyes as if I was the one being unreasonable. "I told you I've been busy. It's not easy being the only one in the office who knows how to handle clients." I pressed her, feeling the heat of betrayal surging through me. "You know it's more than that. I found the receipt." Her facade began to crack, and she shot back with a blend of anger and irritation. "You're being paranoid. You don't trust me, do you?" It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. The blame shifted, and suddenly I was the bad guy for wanting to understand. In that moment, I felt the world around me shatter. The woman I loved was standing in front of me, but she was a stranger. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of emotions swirling within me: confusion, betrayal, and deep sadness. I was angry, furious even, but there was also this deep sadness that gripped me. How could we have gotten to this point? I stepped back, trying to regain my composure. "If it's nothing, then why are you so defensive?" I asked. She just crossed her arms and turned her back on me, as if dismissing my pain was easier than facing the truth. The confrontation left me feeling hollow. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, unable to shake the feeling that everything I knew about my marriage was built on a lie. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I realized that I had a decision to make. I could either confront the reality of my situation or live in the darkness of suspicion and doubt. But I was determined to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. It was time to uncover the reality of Sarah's life, the life she hid from me. And in doing so, I would also figure out my next steps. How could I let this go? This was my life, and I needed answers. The emotional roller coaster had just begun. I needed a plan, and I was going to make sure that if she was going to make me the biggest joke in her life, I would turn the tables and ensure she became the punchline. The following weeks became a blur of confusion and heartache. I found myself in a constant state of vigilance, a detective examining every aspect of Sarah's life. It felt surreal, almost like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. I started paying closer attention to her habits and routines, hoping to catch a glimpse of the truth lurking behind her lies. Sarah became more distant, and every time she left the house, a mix of anger and anxiety washed over me. I often asked myself what she was doing during those late nights, who she was with, and whether she was thinking about me at all. I needed proof, something concrete that I could confront her with. The emotional toll was heavy, but I was determined to unearth the reality of her betrayal. One Sunday afternoon, while Sarah was supposedly out grocery shopping, I decided to dig a little deeper. I went to her laptop, the one she always kept guarded. I don't consider myself a snoop, but I felt justified in my quest for answers. Logging in, I found her email account open and took a deep breath. I had no idea what I might uncover, but I knew I had to at least try. As I scanned through her inbox, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. There were emails from Tom. It was clear they had been corresponding much more than just coworkers do. The messages were flirty, filled with inside jokes and affectionate nicknames. "Can't wait to see you again," and "last night was amazing" jumped out at me like flashing neon signs. My heart raced as the reality of her betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a surge of anger and sadness, a cocktail of emotions crashing over me. I wanted to scream, to throw everything off the table, but instead I chose to remain silent. I gathered the evidence, screenshots and printouts, to confront her later. I couldn't let her deny it any longer. When Sarah came home, I acted as if everything was normal. I didn't want to give her any hint that I was onto her. But inside, I felt like a volcano ready to erupt. I spent the evening replaying our past conversations, those moments when I had been so naive, believing in her every word. It was exhausting. That night, as we lay in bed, I could hear her breathing, and it felt heavy with secrets. I turned to her, feigning sleep, and waited for her to doze off. Once I was sure she was asleep, I felt the weight of her betrayal crushing me. I couldn't let it go on any longer. The following day, I decided to execute my plan. I wanted to confront her, but this time I wouldn't let her spin her web of lies. I would lay out the evidence, the emails, the messages, everything. I wanted her to see how ridiculous her excuses would sound in light of the truth. When I got home from work, I could feel the tension building inside me. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The aroma of her cooking wafted through the air, but it did nothing to dispel the storm brewing within me. As she stirred the pot, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "Can't this wait? I'm in the middle of dinner," she replied, trying to brush me off. "No, it can't wait," I insisted, feeling the anger rise within me. "I know about Tom." Her eyes widened slightly, and for a brief moment I thought I saw panic flicker across her face. "What the hell are you talking about, Jake?" She shot back, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. I pulled out my phone and displayed the evidence, the emails glaring back at us in the dim light of the kitchen. "Why don't you tell me what's going on here?" "Because I'm pretty sure this isn't just a friendly work relationship," I said, my heart pounding with every word. Sarah froze, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "How dare you invade my privacy? You have no right to go through my things," she yelled, her face flushed with fury. "I have every right when you're lying to my face," I countered. The confrontation was building, and I refused to back down this time. "These messages don't lie. You were with him, weren't you? How long has this been going on?" She looked cornered, the bravado slipping away. "It's not what you think. Tom is just a friend. We became close because work is stressful and I needed someone to talk to." "Talk to? Is that what you call it?" I shot back, bitterness lacing my words. "This isn't just talking, Sarah. This is betrayal." For a moment, silence enveloped us. The weight of her lies hung heavily in the air, and I felt a strange mix of vindication and devastation. She had been living a double life right under my nose. I could see the gears turning in her mind, searching for an escape. "I made mistakes, Jake, but I love you. I didn't mean for this to happen," she pleaded, her voice cracking. But I was done listening to her excuses. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of resolve wash over me. "Love doesn't do this, Sarah. You betrayed me, and I'm done being your fool." The gravity of my words hung in the air, and I knew I had to decide what came next. My heart was torn, but one thing was clear. I could no longer share my life with someone who had twisted the very foundation of our marriage into a lie. The emotional impact of discovering her betrayal was profound, but it was time to turn the page and think about what my next steps would be. The confrontation had left me raw, my emotions swirling in a tumultuous storm. Sarah was still standing there, her face a mixture of anger and desperation, and I felt a sense of cold clarity wash over me. I needed to make a decision, but I wasn't sure what path lay ahead. I could almost hear the clock ticking, reminding me that every second I spent in this confrontation was another moment wasted in a relationship built on deceit. "Jake, please," Sarah implored, her voice shaky. "I know I messed up, but I'll make it right. Just give me a chance to explain." I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my frustration. "You've already explained yourself, Sarah. You've shown me who you really are." The words felt heavy on my tongue, weighted with the pain of betrayal. "This isn't something we can just gloss over. You went behind my back with someone who was supposed to be a friend, and it's not just a simple mistake." She stepped closer, desperation evident in her eyes. I was confused. It was just a phase. I didn't mean for it to go this far. She had shifted into her defensive mode, a tactic I had seen before when she didn't want to take responsibility for her actions. "Confused? Is that what you call it? Cheating on your husband with a comedian who's struggling to keep his act together?" I spat back, the bitterness creeping into my tone. "You think I'm going to feel sorry for you because you were under some sort of emotional distress? His name doesn't matter, Jake. What matters is that I love you," she shouted, tears now welling in her eyes, but her words felt hollow, mere echoes of the promises she had broken. "Love doesn't do this, Sarah. Love doesn't lead to betrayal," I replied, feeling my resolve strengthen. "You are the one who chose to cross that line, not me." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the realization dawning on her face. She had lost the upper hand, and she was beginning to understand the consequences of her actions. I stood there, waiting for her to process the truth, knowing that the ball was now in my court. "Are we really doing this?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you really willing to throw everything away over one mistake? One mistake. This isn't just a mistake. This is a pattern, a betrayal of everything we built together." My voice was steady, no longer trembling with anger but filled with determination. "You've turned our life into a joke, and it's not funny anymore." I took a step back, needing space to think. My emotions were still raw, but I could also feel a strange sense of empowerment. I had confronted the truth, and now I was ready to decide what I wanted for my future. I knew that I could no longer allow Sarah to manipulate the narrative. "Jake, what do you want to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. There was a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, but it felt like too little too late. "Do you want a divorce?" The word hung in the air like a dark cloud, heavy and foreboding. I had never imagined we would come to this point, but the betrayal had cut too deep. The thought of spending more time in a marriage filled with secrets and lies repulsed me. "I want you to understand the gravity of what you've done," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I don't think I can ever look at you the same way again. You've broken my trust, and I can't just pretend that's not a big deal." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. I could see her grappling with the reality of what she had lost. I didn't want to revel in her pain, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt knowing that she was finally faced with the consequences of her actions. As we stood there in silence, I began to consider my options. I could opt for divorce, which was likely the best choice. But a part of me wanted to take a different route, one that would allow me to regain a sense of control over my life and show her the weight of her betrayal. I had spent so much time feeling like the joke in this situation. But now I wanted to flip the script. I wanted Sarah to realize how foolish she had been, and I wanted her to feel the repercussions of her choices. "Let's take some time apart," I finally said, my voice steady. "I need to think, you need to think. You've put us in this situation, and I'm not going to rush into a decision without considering all my options." I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that she was losing me. "Jake, please don't do this," she pleaded, but I was resolute. "This isn't about you anymore, Sarah. It's about me finding my footing again. You've taken so much from me, and I need to reclaim my life." With that declaration, I turned away, leaving her standing in the kitchen, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I walked out of the house, not knowing where I would go but needing to put distance between us. I felt both liberated and broken, the reality of my circumstances crashing down around me. I knew I had a long road ahead, but I was determined to not only reclaim my life, but also ensure that Sarah understood the gravity of her actions. I needed a plan, a way to ensure that she would see the consequences of her betrayal. I had been the punchline for too long, and now it was time for her to become the biggest joke. The days that followed the confrontation felt surreal. I moved into a small, temporary apartment, the kind of place you only stay in when you're between homes or in the midst of a chaotic life change. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, and it felt like a physical manifestation of my emotional state, empty and uncertain. I spent my days at work trying to focus on anything but the wreckage of my marriage. My coworkers noticed the change in me. I was quieter than usual, consumed by thoughts of Sarah and her betrayal. I couldn't shake the feeling of being unmoored, drifting without direction. I found solace in the evenings, sitting on the balcony with a drink in hand, watching the sun set over the Seattle skyline. But I was also plotting my revenge. I didn't want to hurt her. It was about showing her the consequences of her actions. I needed to remind her that she had thrown away something valuable for a fleeting thrill. I had spent too long feeling like the joke, and now it was time to turn the tables. I reached out to a few friends to vent and seek advice. Among them was Mike, an old buddy from college. He was always the comedian of the group, quick with a joke and a laugh. He had been through his fair share of heartache, so I thought he'd be the perfect person to help me hatch my plan. Over beers one night, I spilled my heart out. "I just want her to understand what she's lost, you know," I said, my voice low. "I want her to see how foolish she's been." Mike leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "You're not looking for revenge just for the sake of it, are you? You want her to feel something, to realize the gravity of what she did, right?" "Exactly," I replied, a flicker of hope igniting within me. "I want her to see what life without me looks like. Maybe that way she'll realize what she threw away." After a few brainstorming sessions, we came up with a plan. I would create a fake social media profile, one that would catch her attention. I'd post pictures of my new life, filled with laughter and joy, as if I had moved on completely. The goal was to let her see that I was thriving without her, to make her question her choice in a way that would resonate. I spent hours crafting the profile, selecting pictures that showcased my adventures, the places I was visiting, and the moments I was relishing. I kept it lighthearted and fun, presenting an image of someone who had just broken free from a suffocating relationship. I had a few friends help me with casual comments and likes to make it seem more authentic. After a week of setting everything up, I was ready to unleash my plan. I made sure to keep my own profile silent and distant from Sarah's view, allowing the ruse to take full effect. I could hardly wait to see her reaction when she stumbled upon my new persona. The day finally arrived. I was at work, trying to focus on tasks, but my mind kept drifting back to the profile. I knew Sarah would eventually find it. I had even shared a few posts in public groups we had both been part of, ensuring it would reach her. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Mike. "Dude, I think she's seen it. Just got word she's been asking around about you." My heart raced. I stared at my screen, a mix of anticipation and anxiety flooding my thoughts. Had she really noticed? I waited anxiously, wondering how long it would take for her to reach out to me. I thought about how I would respond, what I would say when she finally came looking for answers. I was ready to play the part of the happy ex-husband, the man who had picked himself up and moved on. Days passed, and I watched as my profile gained traction. Sarah's friends started liking my posts, and I could see the whispers spreading. It was intoxicating, knowing that I was making her question her choices. I even received a few messages from friends I hadn't spoken to in ages, congratulating me on my new life. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. My phone rang late one night, and the caller ID lit up with Sarah's name. My heart pounded as I answered, a mix of anger and curiosity swirling within me. "Jake," she said, her voice shaky, "I saw your profile." "Yeah, I figured you would," I replied, keeping my tone light and playful. "Looks like I'm having a pretty good time, huh?" I could hear her inhale sharply on the other end of the line, and I knew I had struck a nerve. "What game are you playing? This isn't funny, Jake," she said, frustration lacing her voice. "You're just trying to make me jealous." I couldn't help but chuckle. Jealous? I don't need to try. You did that all on your own. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice cracking. Don't you want to fix things? We can work through this together. I paused, taking a deep breath as I prepared my next words. Sarah, this isn't about fixing things anymore. You made your choice when you decided to betray my trust. Now I'm showing you what life looks like without you. Maybe it'll help you realize what you've lost. For a moment, silence stretched between us. I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind as she processed my words. You're being cruel, she finally said, her voice low. Cruel. I'm just giving you a taste of your own medicine, I replied, feeling a sense of power surging through me. It was exhilarating to watch her squirm, to see her realization of the consequences of her actions. As we continued to talk, I could hear the desperation in her voice. I didn't realize how much I'd miss you, Jake. It was a mistake. I just wanted to feel something different, but I see now that it was stupid. Maybe you should have thought about that before you cheated, I said, feeling a sense of satisfaction. You had everything you could have wanted, but you threw it all away. The conversation went round and round, with her attempting to justify her actions while I stood firm in my resolve. In that moment, I felt like I was taking back the power she had stolen from me. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to recognize the emptiness that came with betrayal. Finally, I ended the call, feeling a mix of triumph and sadness. I knew this was just the beginning, that I had to keep pushing. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. I was reclaiming my life, and I was ready to show Sarah that the joke was no longer on me. The aftermath of that phone call left me feeling empowered, but I also had to tread carefully. I needed to balance my desire for revenge with the reality of what I was doing. It was exhilarating to see Sarah squirm, but deep down, I knew her pain wouldn't fix what was broken between us. The line between revenge and vindication started to blur, and I had to remind myself what my ultimate goal was: to reclaim my life and to give her a taste of the consequences of her actions. In the days that followed, Sarah's attempts to reach out only multiplied. She began sending texts and emails, each one more desperate than the last. I could almost hear her trying to find the right words to manipulate the situation, to twist it back to her advantage. I deliberately kept my responses brief and aloof, allowing her to stew in her own guilt and confusion. Hey, can we talk? I really want to explain. One message read. We can fix this, I promise. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I shared updates on my fake life with Mike, who was equally thrilled with how it was all unfolding. You're giving her a reality check she desperately needs, he said over drinks one night. This is the best form of therapy you could have. But as the days wore on, I began to feel the weight of the game I was playing. I had crafted this persona to reel Sarah in, but now I was living in its shadow. I didn't want to be the guy who thrived at someone else's expense, but I was also acutely aware that I needed to ensure she understood the gravity of her betrayal. On one particularly sleepless night, I decided to change my approach. Instead of continuing the facade, I would confront her again, but this time, I would do it with honesty. Maybe that would force her to truly see what she had lost rather than just feeling jealousy over a fabricated life. I called her the next evening. When she answered, I could hear the surprise in her voice. Jake, you actually called. Yeah, I want to talk, but I need you to come over, I said, my heart racing as I prepared to face the reality of our situation. There are things we need to clear up. When she arrived, the air was thick with tension. I had been rehearsing what I wanted to say in my mind, but now that she was here, it felt more real than ever. I led her to the living room where we sat across from each other, two people who had once shared everything but now felt like strangers. Jake, I'm sorry. That night we talked, I was just panicking. I didn't mean to cheat. I didn't realize how much I love you until it was too late, she began, her voice trembling. Sarah, I interrupted, trying to collect my thoughts. Love doesn't look like cheating. Love doesn't involve betrayal. You crossed a line that can't easily be uncrossed. Her eyes glistened with tears, and I could see how deeply the reality was hitting her. I know, I messed up so badly. Tom was just. I don't know, I was looking for something I thought I needed, and I lost sight of what we had. I thought we were stagnating, but I see now I was wrong. I took a moment to absorb her words. You're right, we were stagnating, but that's part of a long relationship, Sarah. I thought we could work through our issues together, but instead you chose to run away and sleep with someone else. Someone who was a complete joke, I replied, feeling the emotional weight bearing down on me. I know, and I regret it every day. If I could take it back, I would, she said, the desperation in her voice evident. Can we start over? We can go to couples therapy, anything. I just want to fix this. Her pleas tugged at my heart, but I had to remain strong. You say that now, but it doesn't change what you did. You need to understand that actions have consequences. You can't just wish away the damage. I'll show you I can change, just give me a chance. She insisted, leaning forward in her seat, vulnerability laid bare. I let her words hang in the air as I wrestled with my emotions. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that this could somehow lead back to what we had, but the other part of me knew better. I couldn't ignore the betrayal. I couldn't let it warp our future, even if she did genuinely want to change. Let's make a deal, I proposed, my voice steady and measured. I'll give you time to prove you understand what you've lost, but I need my space in the meantime. You need to understand that I'm not just going to forgive and forget. I need to see that you're willing to put in the work to regain my trust. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I can do that. I'll do whatever it takes, Jake, I promise. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but I was still cautious. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. I needed her to understand the weight of her betrayal, and while I was willing to give her a chance, she had to earn it back. As she left that night, I felt an unexpected mixture of hope and uncertainty. I had taken a significant step in the right direction, but I was also aware that it would take time to rebuild what had been broken. I wouldn't rush into anything, but I was willing to see how things unfolded. The revenge I had sought had transformed into something more complex, an opportunity for growth. I wanted to ensure that in the end, Sarah understood the impact of her choices, not just for my sake, but for her own. The journey wasn't over yet, and I knew that I needed to remain vigilant. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of possibility. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere between Sarah and me shifted in ways I hadn't anticipated. The initial pain of her betrayal was still fresh, but I also felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps we could find a way back to each other. I had made it clear that I needed my space and time to process everything, but I could see that she was genuinely trying to show me she was serious about making things right. She started attending therapy, not just individually but also suggesting we attend couple sessions. It was a step that surprised me. She seemed committed to understanding why she had strayed and how to rebuild the trust we had lost. I agreed to join her, though I approached it with a guarded heart. The first couple of sessions were tough. We unpacked a lot of issues that had been brewing beneath the surface of our relationship: communication problems, unmet needs, and the pressures of life that had pulled us in different directions. I learned about her feelings of isolation and how that had contributed to her poor choices. She shared her regrets openly, and as much as it pained me, I could see that she was genuinely trying to change. But there were still moments of tension, especially when topics like Tom came up in conversation. I had to confront the jealousy and anger that bubbled within me, and Sarah had to face the consequences of her choices again and again. You can't just forget about it, can you? I asked her during one session, frustration simmering beneath the surface. No, I can't, and I don't want to. I need to own it, she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I want to take responsibility for what I did. I want you to know that I'll never let that happen again. I nodded, but doubt lingered in the back of my mind. Trust was a fragile thing, and while I could see her efforts, it was hard to shake the memories of the pain she had caused me. I wondered if this was really the beginning of a new chapter or just a fleeting phase before she would slip back into old habits. As we continued to work together, I began to notice changes not only in Sarah but also in myself. I was becoming more open, willing to share my feelings and vulnerabilities. It felt cathartic to discuss the pain, and as much as it was a struggle, I was realizing that there was a chance for growth if we both committed to it. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we sat on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights twinkling beneath us. Sarah looked at me, her expression earnest. Jake, I know I have to earn your trust back, and I'm willing to fight for it. I don't want to lose you again. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. It's going to take time, Sarah. I'm not the same person I was before. I need to see consistent efforts and commitment from you. I promise I'll do everything I can, she vowed, her voice steady. I want to make this right. Over the next few months, we settled into a new rhythm of communication. We began to find joy in the little things again, sharing meals, taking walks, laughing together. The healing process was slow, but I could feel the walls I had built around my heart starting to crack. I was allowing myself to hope again, though I still approached each day with the caution of someone who had been burned before. Our therapy sessions became a space for growth rather than confrontation. We shared our dreams and fears, exploring the depths of our relationship that had once been neglected. And while I had started this journey with the intention of showing Sarah the consequences of her actions, I found that I was also learning about myself, my needs, my feelings, and my capacity for forgiveness. Eventually, we reached a point where we could begin to talk about the future. The conversations weren't easy, but they were necessary. We mapped out our hopes and goals, what we wanted from our relationship, where we saw ourselves in a few years. It felt freeing to discuss the possibilities without the shadows of betrayal looming over us. One night, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to her and asked, "Do you really think we can get through this?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "I believe we can. I've learned so much about myself, and I know what I need to do to make this work." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Then let's take it one step at a time. We've come this far, and I think we owe it to ourselves to keep going." In that moment, I truly felt like we were embarking on a new journey together. It wouldn't be easy, and there would still be challenges to face, but I could see the potential for something beautiful emerging from the ashes of our past. As I watched Sarah smile, I realized that my desire for revenge had transformed into something much more profound. A partnership rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and the understanding that love isn't just about perfection. It's about navigating the imperfections together. No longer was I the punchline of a joke. Instead, I was ready to embrace the complexity of life and love, knowing that together we could create a future that was far richer than I had ever imagined.